You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Happy Monday evening, folks. This is Scotty Roberts. Welcome to my show, the Intrepid radio program, right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. Come on over, see all the goodness that's Odyssey Radio. And at the same time, come on over and watch this show in its video simulcast over on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. While you're there, join the live chat room. Join the other Intrepids that are there and join the conversation about tonight's show. Now, as many of you know, we're one day from the elections for the president. There's a lot of talk as to whether or not tomorrow is going to decide the election, that it may drag on for days, if not weeks, because of the closeness of the race, because of challenges to the Supreme Court, challenges to things working. And I've got a call coming in that I've got to, I got to tell you, I got to decline it. Sorry about that, folks. That was coming in while we were talking. And people know I'm doing radio, but they still call me. And so I don't know if it's the call to say, hey, you're doing radio, I'm listening to you. So anyway, we know what the election's going to do. We know the kind of thing that's going to go on. We know unless it's incredibly decisive right out the gate, Joe Biden wins 200 electoral votes, or Donald Trump wins 200 electoral votes. Or, you know, one guy takes all the states that are the swing states. And how's that feel when you're not a swing state? That it's the other states that are going to turn things. So if you live in a non-swing state, sorry. But all of this is going to come to a head tomorrow, finally. And I'm glad that it's coming to a head. I'm done with it. I'm done with the campaigning. I want to see it go one way or the other. Either the country is going to decide that Joe Biden and the agenda that he brings with him, which most of which is not his agenda, that he's agreeing to things, and we know these are other people that are running him, because Joe, I'm sorry, okay, I'm not going to go there. You know where I'm going with that. So you've got Joe Biden. You either want that for your country, or you want what Trump has brought to the country. Now, Trump has not brought the division, by the way, that people say he has. People bring division to the country. I'm sorry, there is no leader that is responsible for bringing division. Can we say that President Barack Obama brought racism to the fore again? Because of all the racist talk that there was, because if you opposed Barack Obama and his ideology, you were racist. It wasn't just that you disagreed with his political ideology, you were racist. So, is Barack Obama responsible for the increase in racism in the country? Same thing. Is Donald Trump responsible for the increase of violence? Or are individuals responsible for their actions which create that atmosphere? And so there you go. You can decide. Now, I've already made it argumentative, and I've only got one person here, just me, and so I'm arguing with nobody. I'm just presenting a couple of different ways to look at it. Maybe not being totally fair to both sides of that issue, or to either side of that issue, but there it is. It comes down to me. I said this morning, I put something on my Facebook that said, if you're voting for Biden in one word is feel-good-asm. It's a feel-good-asm. And somebody came in and said, I suppose him talking about death and COVID and, dark winters is his feel-goodism. I said, no, you know what I'm talking about. The whole thing, you listen to Barack Obama, you listen to all the people speechifying about Joe Biden, and the tack that they've taken is one that he wants to revive the feel-goodism of the Obama administration, which was ineffective because the Trump administration is a get-shit-done-ism. And so that's the way I see them. Feel-good-asm, like an orgasm, feel-good-asm versus get shit doneism. And the only reason more shit didn't get done in the Trump administration was because of all the fighting of people who continually were trying to delegitimize his presidency. Constant fighting. And who brought that fight? Donald Trump or the people who brought the fight to the table? They say Donald Trump was ineffective when COVID was early. But what was he doing? He was being impeached by the Democratic House. So the House of Representatives, all made up of, that vote made up of all Democrats that voted to impeach Donald Trump. It was a partisan vote to delegitimize his presidency. It was the 9th time they had proposed impeachment since the second day that he was in office. So, there you go. There you have it. That's what the left focused on for 3 years of the Trump presidency. Let's move on from that. Tomorrow is Election Day, and that's good. I'm glad it's going to be done. One part of this is done already. They already say more than 2/3 of the number of votes cast in 2016 on Election Day have already been cast now in preliminary voting. And so early voting and so on. So is that a good sign? Who knows? Who is that favoring? What candidate do people want in the office overall? And who's going to first claim that there was tampering or Russian tampering with our elections? It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out tomorrow. And right now, nobody wants to allow anybody to claim victory, as they do every year. It's usually by 7, 8 o'clock in the evening you're hearing all these networks trying to declare victory for one candidate or another. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out tomorrow as well. But I think this is going to be a closely watched election on all fronts. And no matter what happens, it'll be interesting. So all you've got to determine, if you haven't voted yet, is determine which way do you want to see the country go. Do you want to see it go to the kind of political ideology that's represented by a Trump presidency, or the political ideology that's represented by a Biden, Kamala Harris, more than likely, presidency? So there's your decision to make. And we're going to leave that alone now. That's politics. So with this week starting on Monday, and we're about 8 minutes into this show, on a show where we don't talk that much about politics, 8 minutes out of our 1 hour broadcast tonight, we're done. And we're going to move on to the topic for tonight. And, trying to decide the direction we want this show to take. All you diehard Intrepheads out there, you like the history that we do. You like some of the psychological shit that we do. You like the direction I take when we talk about relationships and things of that nature. What do you want to hear? Why don't you either write me, email me, or come on over to the chat room, state your piece, say, hey, here's what we'd like to see. Come on over to YouTube and state your case over on the YouTube channel. Come on over to Facebook and connect with me personally, or connect with one of my pages is the Intrepid radio program. You can come over to that page and express yourself. Get a hold of me. Let me know where you want to see this show be and go. If you're satisfied where it is, say that too. We'll keep doing what we're doing. But there are things, I definitely have some plans that I'm going to start implementing this week. I've already hinted at them. Things that we're going to do to grow this channel and grow the show. Talking, I like to talk, you know that. I'm great at talking with my friends. I love to talk. I love to be engaged in conversation. Maybe I talk too much when I'm in conversation with friends, but I like to, that subconscious thing in me is I talk to be engaged. And sometimes I got to watch it so I don't over-engage. And so when I talk about something, it's because I'm drawn in that direction. It's something I want to get across. It's information that I think is valuable. It's things that mean something to me and therefore hopefully mean something to other people. And so, talking, though, to myself, if all I have is a small handful of listeners that are my friends that love this show, then my talking becomes almost masturbatory for me. It makes me feel good. It pleases me. But what do we do to make this show pleasing to everybody? Everybody that comes in. I'm not going to be pleasing to everybody. Not everybody's going to love this topic. I get a lot of people out there that complain about me. That I shouldn't be talking. How can you have him talking? And why should you have him talking? And so on and stuff like that. That's okay. I say F them. If you don't like the way I talk, you don't have to listen to me. But if you enjoy what the content of this show is, what is it do you think we need to do to get that message out to people? I got some ideas, and I'm gonna start pursuing those. But what are your ideas? What do you think? What do you think about the show? So there, I'm going to leave that. I'm going to belabor that point and kick that horse if I'm not careful. And I've spent another 4 minutes talking about that. Well, 3.5 minutes talking about that. So let's get off of that and let's move on to tonight's topic. This is the kind of fare you're going to get from me on this show. You're going to get historical, archaeological, paranormal. You're going to get psychological. You're going to get talk about relationships and family. Why do I talk about that stuff so much? Because I have a relationship and I have a family. And so tonight I want to talk about something that's a little near and dear to my heart, and something that maybe some of you have experienced before. As many of you know, I have been married before and I have older children. Rainie's and my children, the three of them, are 11, 8, and 5. And now 11, soon to be 9 and 6, because birthday's coming up in a few weeks. My birthday coming up in 3 weeks, I turn 60. So maybe I've got age on a lot of you, and that age has something to do with the fact that, and I've got somebody calling in again, and I've got to hang up because I'm recording this show. But, so sorry about that little interruption. I can't... When you're doing this on the internet, it's sometimes unavoidable. If somebody's calling in, you got to be very careful about that. And so, about how I handle that. So I'm going to have to call him back. But I'll hit him up at the break. So all of these things, these are things, and I think they're not getting the message from me because they keep calling back. So you're going to have to deal with that and hear that as we're going on here. Hold on. I just have to decline it. There we go. All right. I hate to do that to my buddy because he doesn't know why I'm declining him, but I am. I'll call him back later. So, and for those of you who know, this Ruben Fasthorse. Maybe I should have just brought him on. But you're not going to see him visually. You could have heard him, but Ruben doesn't know I'm doing a show right now. So, apparently. So, I'll catch up with him a little later. And we're going to line up something with Ruben soon. But you all are... The point I was making is that I'm a little older than some of you. Some of you I'm a little younger than. Some of you have had kids who are now adults. Some of you still have kids who are still kids. And so there's a big question that I wanted to address tonight. And it has to do with, what do you do when your adult children break your heart? What do you do when your adult children mess up? And I've experienced that. Adult children, what do you do? How do you, when do you help them, and when do you let them learn the lesson? And my adult daughters, my twin daughters, they're the oldest kids I have at 28 years old, soon to be 29. To be 28 going on 29 again, knowing what I know. But they're doing fantastic. They don't need Dad's help. Sometimes they've helped Dad. When I had, I think I mentioned this before, when I had my heart surgery and I was down, they did a little fundraiser for me with their mermaid tail company. And in 3 days, raised about $45,000 for me to help us through the time that I would be down. That's the kind of reputation they have. And they were selling raffle tickets for, I think, $25 a piece for people to win a raffle of one of their big $5,000-$6,000 really high-end custom mermaid tails. And I don't know what the price was of it, but in selling those tickets at $20 to $25 a shot, they raised $45,000. Now, the sad thing is, about half of that the IRS stole, and Twitter put a freeze on another third of that for 6 months. Or not Twitter, PayPal, stuff like that. There was all kinds of legalities and technicalities because of money. And as much as they argued the point, that's what they did. But what I'm saying is this. The point I'm making is that my daughters have created success for themselves. There's been very little that my daughters have had to come to me for help, other than emotional support, dad support, things like that, which I'm fully able, capable, and willing to do. Then I have my son, who's had a tough go. He's 19. He'll be 20 in a couple of months. Now, and my son has had some tough breaks, some tough goes. He had a tough time living with his mom when he was a teenager. He made some mistakes, some bad decisions. And so you start thinking, what do I do when my adult child breaks my heart? And it's more than breaking your heart. That's the emotional side of it. The physical side of it is, what do you do when your adult child messes up? How do you support them? How do you show them that you still love them and support them while they're in the midst of struggle? My son called me. I happen to be awake. Maybe it's the time change and all that. It's only an hour, this time change thing. But we ended up going to bed all kind of early yesterday. And I'm talking like 9 o'clock. I think I was in bed at 9:10. Rainey was in bed at like 7:30 with the little kid. Took her to bed at 7:30, the 5-year-old. And so I went up there, and I woke up in the middle of the night feeling like it's 5 in the morning. And I look at the clock, and it's 12:23 this morning. And I'm wide awake, and I'm thinking, surely something screwy with my system. But I woke up, I got up, I spent an hour dicking around with some stuff, and then I sat down on the couch, kind of laid down on the couch, and fell back to sleep. And my little girl, my 5-year-old, came down at about 5 and curled up with me on the sofa, all bundled up. And then I had a hard time waking her up at 7 o'clock for school. And so I got a full night's sleep. But you wake up, and what was interesting, I woke up at 12:30. My son called me, my 19-year-old, called me from North Carolina, where he's living, at about 2:30 this morning. And he calls and says, hey, I'm on break. He does an overnight shift at a grocery store where he stocks the shelves and stuff down in Asheville, North Carolina. And so we talked for about an hour, and that was good. And he's struggling a bit, doing well, I think, emotionally, but he's struggling, can't get ahead, money's tough. He wasn't calling me asking for money. He was just calling to talk, and it was great. We had a good time catching up, interspersed with, why do I have only 1 can of chicken broth to go on the shelf here? Because he was stocking shelves while we're talking. So all parents of adult children know that parenting doesn't stop when your child or your children reach that magical age of 18, that magical age that we have put on adulthood. Wasn't it 12 or 13 in ancient times? If you were 18 and still living at home, or the equivalent of what we call living at home nowadays as an adult, if you were 18 and not establishing yourself, you were way behind the game. How many times have I mentioned, it's like Napoleon Bonaparte. At age 22 or 23, he was the general of all the French armies. 23 years old. Is that ambition? And he's not unique, because as we've evolved in society, as our culture has evolved, as humanity has evolved, it seems we keep kids home longer. And we want them to be young longer. But that magic age of 18, does parenting stop there? And sometimes, it can get a whole hell of a lot more complicated at age 18 and up. And a parent's heart and mind are still actively engaged with their children, no matter how old those children get or where they're living. I can look at somebody like a Joe Biden. Let's look at him. Not speaking about him, how I think about him politically, but as a dad. What is he? He's 77 years old, and he's got adult son who's having problems. Does he stop loving his kid? That's the first example that popped into mind. No, he doesn't stop loving his kid. How old is Hunter Biden? He's in his late 40s, I think, or early mid-40s, something like that. So parents, mostly if we're between 20 and 30 years older than our kids, when we're 50 to 70 years old, that makes our kids what? Anywhere from 20 to 30 to 40 to 50 years old. And so we don't stop loving our kids. Now, by the way, I've got two approaches here tonight. There's kind of a more emotional approach, which is what I'm in now, and there's maybe a harder approach, a more factual or logical approach. And we're not going to hit both of those tonight, but we're going to dig into them as deeply as we can. Now, there was a HuffPost article I saw that the 6 things you shouldn't say to your adult child, and it highlighted that any tension between parents and adult children can often be felt more strongly by a parent, as parents are often more emotionally invested in their children. So how often do you hear a parent say, "You aren't going to understand this until you have children of your own"? How many of us have said that to our kids? Ruth Nemzoff, she's the author of Don't Bite Your Tongue, How to Foster Rewarding Relationships with Your Adult Children. She made the point that we fantasize that we can say anything we want to our kids, but the truth is we never really could. And so a good rule of thumb, if you wouldn't say the comment to the person you admire the most in the world, as you would not wish to offend or upset them, then don't make this comment to your adult child. Now, some parents make thoughtless and unintentionally hurtful comments about such things to their adult child as weight, sports or zits on their face, frequency of not calling you or coming to see you, their partners expressing dislike usually, housekeeping deficits, dirty dishes, clothes, untidy house, relationship status, lack of children, and most of these comments would be considered intrusive, an invasion of privacy. And most of our friendships wouldn't survive negative opinions expressed in these areas. So something that all parents of adult children need to let go of is guilt-tripping our kids. Don't guilt-trip your adult kids, and do not guilt-trip yourself. Why? Because, and we'll get into that when we come back. I'll tell you why we don't guilt-trip our kids. We're out of time to really dig into it deep. And I'll tell you, my son was dating somebody that I didn't think was very good for him. Not for any other reason than I thought she was too young, she was not right for my son, and yet I accepted her because he loved her. I told her, I said, I love you because my son loves you. And then they broke up, and I'm like, whew, I'm kind of glad about that. But let's talk about this guilt factor thing and other things when we come back. Sit tight. We'll be right back.
in touch with my husband for the best f***ing awesome kick-ass design and illustration. He knows his stuff, and he's been at this for more years than I've been alive. Go to ScottAllenRoberts.com. That's Scott with 2 T's, ALANROBERTS.com to take a look at his online portfolio of work, or call 651-468-8115. Now go out and kick some ass with some kick-ass graphic design.
Hire my dad so he can take me to Disneyland.
All right, gang, thanks for sitting on through that break. This is Scotty Roberts. You're listening to my show, the Intrepid radio program, right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. Come on over and see all the goodness that is Odyssey Radio. And at the same time, you can see the parent company, Mojo 50 Radio. There are links over there. And at the same time as well, you can come over and see the video broadcast of the show, the simulcast, going on the same time as the broadcast in audio. And that's over on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts to watch this show in video. And about the only thing you're really going to get video with me, seeing my facial expressions. From time to time on shows where we're doing archaeological stuff or paranormal stuff, and all that, I show you some pretty pictures of things. And that's fun. But mostly the video is just to watch me, I guess, as I'm going along. You can see my facial expressions, see what I'm doing. But even better than that is the live chat room, which is going on right now at the YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. Now we're talking about our adult kids. How do we deal with our adult kids? How do we love our adult kids? How do we keep our mouths shut when our adult children fail? How do we act when our adult kids start messing up? When an adult child violates our values, makes poor choices, or gets in deep trouble, we often question our parenting abilities. Our doubts shout at us. Was it something I did? Was I a bad parent? Would this have happened if I'd been a better parent? Would this have happened if I'd been more spiritually attuned to God or my faith? Or if we'd prayed more as a family? Would this have happened if my marriage hadn't failed along the way? Would this have happened if we hadn't argued so much? The what-ifs can paralyze our souls. It can wreak havoc on our confidence as parents. And one of the greatest heartbreaks for a parent is watching a child waste his or her life, their potential or opportunities with poor choices. And there was one woman I heard that said, I've been through a lot of pain in my life, but I've never felt heartbreak like I did through the poor choices of my kids. A friend of mine whose son struggled with drugs and sex addictions put it this way: it feels like a death, or at least the death of a dream. No doubt about it, big children bring on bigger problems. So when your young adult kids have serious adult-sized problems, these are the little kids that used to sit on your lap. I was just yesterday, I was looking for something, an old file for a older client of mine. It said, hey, do you still have this file on this XYZ thing? I said, let me look for it. And as I'm looking, I found on my external storage disks, I find old videos, a whole folder full of Rainey's videos of the kids when they were my now 11, 8, and 5-year-olds, when the 11-year-old was a year old or 2 years old. And you start looking at that, and I got distracted for a good hour watching some of these videos, looking at pictures. I called up I found an old iPhoto file, which is now Photos if you're on a Mac. And I opened that up through, and I see all these old pictures dating back to 2010. And I'm like, oh my God. And I'm looking at my little kids. I'm looking at my son, my 19-year-old son, playing with my now 11-year-old son about 9 years ago. And they're lightsaber fighting with the toy lightsabers. And my older son, his voice hadn't even changed yet. So you see those things and you remember these kids that are having serious adult-sized problems now that they're adults, These are kids that used to crawl on your lap, that used to crawl all over your shoulders, that were small enough for you to toss up in the air. And it breaks your heart when you see them having problems. And sometimes when they're adults, they have those problems that can derail a healthy, productive life. And your heart breaks over that. But your child's choices don't have to break you. Even good parents have children who make poor choices. And it's not to write off that kid and say that kid just makes poor choices. What an idiot. It's not that. It's that sometimes kids do that. Think back in your own life. You ever make poor choices when you were a kid? Or did you always make the right steps along the way? Always had the best advice in place? Many times poor choices are made when your adult kids don't want to seek your advice on it. And that's why they're making poor choices. And remember, we were all young adults making our choice. And we didn't always want to bring stuff to mom and dad and ask their advice. We wanted to do it on our own. That's what life is about. You got to go out there. You got to do your own. You got to make your mistakes. But what do you do when your kid makes regrettable choices? I left off at the end of the first segment talking about the guilt that we put on them. We try to guilt our kids over their weight. Hey, man, you put on some weight, buddy. I would never say that to a friend of mine. But we care so much about our kids that we want to go, hey, I got a little closer inside track, so I'm going to talk to you about your weight. Or I'm going to talk to you about your grooming habits. Why does my adult kid need to know my advice on grooming habits? Frequency of calling me? Yeah, I try to not ever guilt my kids. Although it's a little hard sometimes, you know. It's like, my daughters are really good at keeping up with their little brother and sister. But there are times where you have big gaps and you go, how come they don't keep up with them very well? Well, they're busy. They got their own lives. It's not their kids. It's their younger brother and sisters. My son, he's had his struggles, but he called the other couple of weeks ago, and he ended up talking to Flynn for, at least an hour and a half. And he said to me just last night when he called me at 2:30 in the morning, just to talk because he's on break from his job. He just wanted to talk, just catching up. He never even mentioned, by the way, hey, it's 2:30 in the morning. I hope you're awake. He just called me 2:30 in the morning because he knows me. He knows I'm always awake. But we talked, and he said, I couldn't believe the conversation I had with Flynn a couple of weeks ago, how adult he seems. Now, Sam, my older son, moved away from here to go live with his sisters down in North Carolina. We're in Wisconsin. And so the Minneapolis-St. Paul region. And so he hasn't lived up here for a good 3 years. So it's been 3 years where my oldest son, frankly, between you and me, he could have used his older brother. But his older brother was also going through problems of his own at that time, with his mother, and different things. He got in trouble. He almost went to juvenile detention. He was in a boys' home for a while after going in for therapy at youth. What's the name of that organization? Teen Challenge. All these kinds of things. He was struggling in his late teens, and my younger son missed out on having that older brother around, and I feel bad for that. And there was a point where I saw my younger son just kind of give up on that. He misses Sam. Can I call Sam? Can I do this? And I look at that, and I try to never guilt my son Sam, but when I talk to him, I say, hey, call your brother. He really misses you. And so what do you do when your kids screw up? When they don't meet your expectations of them? Sometimes the things we say to our adult kids are intrusive, an invasion of privacy, and most of our friendships wouldn't survive if we said those same types of things to our closest friends. And so, something that all parents of adult children need to let go of is the guilt tripping. That's where we left off at the end of the first segment. Don't guilt trip your adult kids, and don't guilt trip yourself. Why? You got to let go. It's the art of parenting adult children. Guilt tripping leads to the R word when it comes to adult children. You know what the R word is? Resentment. Oh, my parents are guilting me. And your kids start to resent you. And just like the worry and the advice giving, guilt tripping leads to no good. We can also guilt trip ourselves in the process. My goal is to not feel guilty and to blame myself for anything my children do or don't do. And so keeping these simple recommendations in mind can go a long way toward minimizing and preventing these unnecessary conflicts and guilt with your adult child or children. And they go like this. Number 1, how do you know when it's okay to advise your adult child? You ever want to advise your kids? Yeah, we all do it. And so if you've got an adult child. And by the way, those of you who don't have kids that are adults yet, start thinking about this. You start building the way you raise your kids and release them into the world to make their own decisions. Start to think about how you wanted to be advised when you were an adult. A child who is now an adult. It's not that you never needed it or wanted it. It's just think of how much you wanted it. There was a book, Walking on Eggshells, subtitled Navigating the Delicate Relationship Between Adult Children and Parents by Jane Isay, I-S-A-Y. She advises parents to keep their mouths shut and their doors open, although not too wide, lest they move back in on you. Why? Advice freely given and not asked for is often perceived as criticism. Now, son, daughter, let me give you some advice on this. How does that usually come across? As criticism. It doesn't matter if you feel your advice would be helpful to them. Don't give advice you've not been asked to provide. That's a tough thing to not do. When my son was dating a woman that I felt was a really bad situation for him, I didn't go, now you didn't ask me for this advice, but I'm going to tell you. No. I just said, he told me at one point, he said they were engaged. And inside I went, oh my God, oh, this is horrible. That's the last thing my 19-year-old son is to be engaged to this woman and to start having kids with her. Oh my God, don't have kids. Did I say that? No. The only advice I gave that was, I think, unsolicited by him in talking about the whole relationship thing is I housed it in this, and I said, you're not asking me for this advice, but I'll tell you this. I said, stay kid-free as long as you can. I said, build yourself up, build your home, build your lives, build your careers, then have kids. I said, you start having kids in the middle of that, I said, you could put the halt on a lot of good things. I said, but hey, I said, yeah, I know, Dad, I've already got, and I'm like, I know you know that. I said, I'm just a dad, I have to say that. And so, it doesn't matter if you feel your advice would be helpful to them. Don't give advice you haven't been asked to provide. And if you cannot keep yourself during a conversation where they brought up issues or worries that they might be dealing with from phrasing advice in terms such as, have you ever considered? Or some people have found those things may be less likely to be taken as criticisms or put downs. And that's why I said to my son, I said, I could give you advice, but have you ever considered that maybe having kids at age 20 could prevent you from doing some of those things you wanted to do? Not that kids are a burden, but kids are a burden. And so phrased like this, it also is less likely to be taken as if you have no confidence in them being able to manage their affairs. And that's something you want to keep instilling in them. I have confidence in you. You're going to make it. This morning at 2:30 in the morning, my son, who dropped out of high school because of some of his problems, legal problems and stuff like that, was going for his GED last year, his equivalency for a high school diploma, and he didn't take the final test. And so he still doesn't have his GED, and he was talking last night about, I really got to get that. I got to get that done. I said, that might be good. He was talking about things he wanted to do. I said, son, there's times I really wish you were here. You were back up here in this area, and I could see you could see your brother, and we could interact as a family. I said, there's little things I'd love to be able, I wish I could help you with. And then I said, but you're out there. But I said, hey, you know what? I said, you're talking about maybe going to trade school, picking up welding, or doing something like that. I said, there's nothing wrong with that. Now, by the way, my son, as he was growing up, always into cinematography. He wanted to go to school, be a cinematographer, or be an animator, or things like that. And then now that's all dropped to the wayside. Because what's happened now? Now he's in life and he's stuck struggling, trying to make sure he's got a roof over his head. And he knows that. And so I would love to be there and help him get where he wants to get. But he's got to do this. And so he's looking at trade school. And so I referred him to MikeRoweWorks.org. Mike Rowe, if you remember his show Dirty Jobs, he's got a big organization about trade school. And I said, check it out, son. Check out the scholarships they have and things like that. And so but the point I'm making here is that if you constantly give unsolicited advice, you might find your adult child is going to contact you less. They're going to want to talk to you a lot less. And they'll withdraw, as nobody likes to feel like they're incompetent or that their parent is hovering and intrusive in their private life. So be sensitive to how your advice might be perceived. And if you're in doubt, don't advise unless you're asked what you think. Now, if you're asked, that's a whole different... So what do you think about this, Dad? Lay it on the line with me, Dad. I go, are you ready for this? Because I can lay it on the line with you. Or ask, would you like me to tell you what I think? And then listen to their answer. If they say no, drop it. So your kid requires you most of all to love them for who they are, not spend your whole time trying to correct them. So what if an adult child doesn't seem to be behaving maturely? If they're smoking? What if they're drugs, if you know about that? What if they're smoking? I don't know why I said that. If you don't smoke, and I've smoked. I don't smoke now, but I've smoked. If my child's going to smoke, it's their business. And so, but what if an adult child doesn't want to behave maturely? How are you supposed to react as a parent? What do you think, Rainey?
Yeah, I don't think. What?
There you go. There's Rainey. Oh, come here. You got to see the shirt she's wearing today because she wandered into the studio. Here, look at this. Here, step over.
Yeah, I was going to say, can we...
Yeah, we can. Here, there we go.
I'll step them on the stool.
There you go.
Achoo.
Not.
Oh, we gotta go that way. Gotta go
Oh my God. Not today, Satan.
Not today, Satan.
Not today, Satan says. So there you go.
Yeah.
I love that on you.
Thanks. I figured it's going to be 60 degrees today. It's t-shirt weather.
That's right. It is t-shirt weather. It's going to be really nice out today. So there, those of you who are not on the YouTube stream didn't get to see my wife's lovely shirt. And those of you who are here did. So, not today, Satan. But what we're talking about on this whole thing about adult children and when to keep your mouth shut and when to say something. What if an adult child doesn't seem to be behaving maturely? Now, according to this article I read, Still Advising Your Grown Kids? Time to Stop. The author, Michael Siegel, states, so the best you can do is accept each other for who you are. You're basically saying, welcome to the adult world, honey. I love you, but you're not what I prayed you would be. And they're saying, thanks, Mom and Dad. You're a little annoying, but you're my parents and not what I prayed I'd have. I love you, too. And that's, of course, if you're people of deep faith and you pray about those particular things, but it's out there. So according to the article, there are 5 principles for parenting problem adult children. And this was author Dana McCain. Makes the very valid point that if an adult child is continually making bad decisions and wanting you to bail them out, but resents and doesn't want unsolicited advice or criticism, then it's good to remind them it doesn't work like that. That's a two-way street. If you want me to bail you out all the time when you're having problems, but you don't want to take any advice I have to help you prevent yourself from getting in trouble, you're going to see maybe a slacking off on the helping you when you need help. And if they want your help, as they've behaved immaturely, then they're going to get your advice. It's a trade-off. Your kids can't expect you to provide for them, absorb consequences of their poor planning or their decision-making, or otherwise shield them from the realities of adulthood. The mantra of parents of adult children should be, you deserve to be treated like an adult. And you wanted to be treated like an adult. You wanted to make what you felt were adult decisions. I deserve a break from parenting a child. So if you're going to make your adult decisions, quote unquote, you're going to have to deal with your adult circumstances or consequences. But you don't want to let your kids drown either. You're still going to throw them a life preserver if they really need it. But if they know how to swim and they're just floundering, you go, hey, got to swim and catch up to the boat. But sometimes the best thing we can do as parents is simply to be there and listen. But let them know that they're going to have to work it out for themselves. Psychology Today. I like Psychology Today. I like the magazine. I like the website. I draw a lot of information from there. They're a little too leftist in a political ideology for me, personally, but I like a lot of what they have to say. It advises parents to ask themselves these following questions. 1. Does your child now act entitled to and demand things you once enjoyed giving? Car privileges, gifts, perks at home, rent money, when they lived with you. Does it feel like you're living from crisis to crisis with your adult child? Do you sacrifice too much to meet your adult child's needs? Are you afraid of hurting your child? Are you feeling burdened, used, resentful, or burned out? If you answered yes to any of those, then maybe you're no longer helping, but you're enabling your adult child. Like I say, I've got 3 adult children. 2 of them are doing pretty good for themselves, and sometimes I want to guilt them over certain things. How come you don't call your younger brother and sister very often? But I try not to guilt them. Guilting them builds resentment. So you say, hey, Flynn would love to talk to you. Give him a shout. Don't advise them. Throw it out there for them. And thankfully, they're pretty good about it. And my son is another story. He's had his problems. But at least he's not looking to us to say, bail me out of my problems. But he does have his problems, and he's working very hard to overcome them, and I congratulate him on that. I wish I could do for him, but if you do for them, what are you doing? You're enabling them, maybe even subconsciously enabling them to continue the activity that doesn't get them where they need to be. And so you go, man, I'd love to help you. What can I do to give you some moral support? I'm here for you. Anytime you need me, call me. That doesn't mean you got the money to give them, or you want to give them money, even if you had it. Doesn't mean all those things. Doesn't mean bailing them out all the time. Seek professional help and support to assist you in setting boundaries and sticking to them if you lack those things and lack the knowledge of how to do them. Sometimes the situation might be made more complex by factors like addictions, mental health issues. However, these don't mean there should not be goals or collaborations or progress towards independence occurring. And one of the best pieces of advice that Jeffrey Bernstein gave in his article, Creating Boundaries with Your Adult Child, was for a parent to give themselves time to respond to a request for help from an adult child who's constantly asking for help. Waiting 24 to 48 hours is going to give you time to think, to talk to other adults who might be able to assist and give you time to consider your response, so you don't end up in a continual cycle of dependency. And this author, Jeffrey Bernstein, PhD, he suggests that asking your adult child, what are your ideas for resolving a crisis? Hey, son, what's your idea for getting out of that? He also reassured parents that it's also okay for them to say they've changed their mind about how they support that child. And if a condition for support for an adult child with mental health or addiction issues is that they have to be in treatment, then a parent should be able to refuse requests for money if their child is not keeping to the agreement. And so by loving them for more than their abilities, we show our children that they're much more the sum of their accomplishments. So number 3, if you're keeping track of the numbers here, what if your adult child stops having the same values that you brought them up with? You'll only accept your child to the degree you accept yourself. Making their own choices is something that adults do as they find their own identity. Think back to when you stepped out to be an adult in your own life. You didn't want somebody dictating your choices to you. You wanted to make your own choices. Sometimes you had to make your mistakes and you learned from your mistakes. Sometimes the choices of your adult child may not align with your values and your ethics. What if it's your religion? What if they choose a different path than you? So as an adult has a right to autonomy and to believe what they wish. Your child doesn't always have to be in trouble, by the way, for you to want to step in and advise them. I remember when I was in college, I went to Bible college because I chose to go to Bible college. My mom advised me differently. She advised me to go to the University of Minnesota. You know why? Because we were poor folk. And she had a full scholarship grant in aid for me from the state of Minnesota. Had I attended the University of Minnesota, I would have attended the U of M on a full scholarship. And if I had gone into things like I say now, I would have gone into psychology. I would have gone into, I too wanted to go into cinematography. Things that, what if I had pursued that? Where would I be today? But no, I went to the little Bible college that I was told by my church I would be out of God's will if I didn't attend. So I made that choice. My mom looked at that and said, "You're crazy." But she didn't. And she advised, but she also pulled back. She said, "If that's what you want to do, I support you." So an adult child has a right to autonomy and to believe whatever they want to believe. Your child is no exception to this. And these beliefs are going to generate consequences in their lives. These differences may be about such emotionally charged issues as religion and spirituality, sexuality, politics, etc. How many kids are exactly what their parents are politically? Now, you notice normally that kids choose almost the opposite or mirror end of the spectrum from their parents. If you grew up Democrat, farm labor, DFL, all of that stuff, liberal, progressive, your child may end up being a conservative. What if you're a conservative family? Your child might grow up being liberal. They do that. Sometimes they just say, "I've turned to paganism to rebel against my parents' Methodism or Presbyterianism," whatever it might be. Remember, views can change over a lifetime. Just because your child is feeling one way now may not mean they think that way forever. Or they may. Who knows? You and they will not know right at this point. And so your views on some things are no doubt very different to those you held when you were 18 years old. And so if you overreact or give ultimatums, you might sever that relationship or irreparably damage it forever. So before we go, we're at the end of the show. Is your relationship significant enough to you to maintain when your adult child may have different views than you? Can you negotiate to agree to disagree? Or do you need to have power over your child still, and when they're an adult? Can you agree to come together and put your differences aside respectfully? Put your relationship before individual options and beliefs? If your relationship comes first with your child, how will you move forward? Where are you able to compromise? What are you not willing to compromise? How will this impact your ability to be able to see any grandchildren? How will severing this relationship, if that's what you choose to do, impact on your relationships with your spouse or your other children? often it's the adjustment of our expectations rather than reality itself that's the hurdle we have to leap. And I got to leave you with that because we're totally out of time. Folks, thanks for being here. We're going to take a 23-hour break, and I'll see you right back here. Sit tight. Have a good night.